This book will be one of your go-to books if you're a beginner hobbyist in electronics or if you're a student in electrical or electronics engineering. This book is a great reference for people who also have a slightly deeper understanding of electronics and just want to reference any particular components or any particular topic. Now, this book is going to be a comprehensive guide that's designed for both beginners and more experienced electronic enthusiasts. It is packed with like about 1,000 pages of content that covers everything from basic electronic principles and to more advanced topics like microcontrollers and digital electronics. Now, I really like the language used in this book because it's not too basic that it treats you like you're a toddler holding your hand, but it's also not too advanced to where they use a lot of jargon that makes you feel like you're reading an academic paper. This book is written in a general way that anyone can understand while also maintaining the integrity on the topics covered. So let's begin by looking into the book. So let's get right into looking through what this book has to offer. So here's a quick look at the table of contents. Now, in the fourth edition, they did update the material to make it more modern to what you'll see in everyday electronics. There's 17 chapters, and I think one of the biggest pros of this book is its depth. Now, it's incredibly detailed and thorough. There's a lot of offering of more than just surface level information. You'll find plenty of diagrams, illustrations, and step by step guides, which is perfect if you're like a visual learner such as myself. So it makes a lot of complex topics kind of approachable. So you see, you have chapter 7, which is a hands-on with the electronics. So they give you a lot of different projects to work with, and a lot of good overview of topics that you'll see if you're trying to design and build electronics. So you can cover operational amplifiers, filters, voltage regulators, a lot of the digital electronics and microcontrollers that I mentioned, programmable logic, motors, audio electronics, and modular electronics. And you have an appendix to actually go back through. So yeah, this is a lot of good information that you can see within the chapters here. Now, speaking of depth, chapter 2 is one of the standout sections for me, especially if you're looking to understand the foundational theory behind electronics. It does a fantastic job of explaining the basic like Ohm's law and Kirchhoff laws in a way that is really digestible, even if you're new to the subject. Now, this chapter lays down the kind of groundwork that you will need to kind of make sense of for more of the advanced topics later in this book. And it is very, very, very thorough. Chapter 2 alone, it starts at page 5 and goes all the way to chapter 3, starts on 253. And if we walk through, we'll see that it is very, very math heavy. And the math really shouldn't really scare you in this book. It is kind of detailed in chapter 2, and if you're not very strong in mathematics, that's okay. You kind of want to just get a feel of for how these things were derived and proven and how it can be applied. There's also some differences between the theoretical components versus like the real world, like knowing the difference between an ideal capacitor and a real world capacitor. So you kind of get the mathematical foundationals for trying to understanding the both. Like here's what a ideal capacitor should do, but due to other things like resistance and capacitance and stuff like that, here's how they actually function in the real world. And so this book does a very, very good job in trying to explain that and using very good diagrams. So you really won't feel left out of the water when you go through this book. And it does give you everything that you kind of need to know to want to pick up and then just jump right into the more advanced topics. But like I said, this book is for both beginners and if you have a little bit more advanced understanding, you can pick this book as a reference guide. And a lot of recommendations that you can actually just skip chapter two. There's a lot of math in here, but you can actually just skip chapter two if you don't need it and jump straight into chapter three. But I really like the mathematical feel of this book that it does. It kind of gives you everything you need. And here's what I mean is this book has really good diagrams and really good explanations for the example. Like in the section here on chapter 4 under semiconductors, it says how a JFET works. And here we have a diagram of what a typical JFET will look like with the PN junctions here. And as you apply a negative voltage, it talks about how there's this magnetic field that kind of increases or sort of decreases this depletion region right here. And when the depletion region kind of gets smaller and smaller, it creates a resistance, which means less current can actually flow through until it gets pinched off and stopped. So as you increase the voltage in the negative direction here, you actually increase the magnetic field, which depletes the or increases the depletion region here. So there's a lot of good explanations and diagrams here. And also you have the JFET water analogy here that kind of helps explain what's actually happening in the inner functions of a JFET. So this book is included like with a lot of practical examples. As we're still here in the same chapter, I'm going through it, and here you can see like it shows you how to build a simple electrical field meter or electrostatic detector using an antenna, just a piece of wire connected to a JFET, and then you can have an ammeter in between here and the voltage divider here. And just that simple project right here, you can build an electrostatic detector. So it's really good that they include that here with a lot of other projects here. And you'll just see this loaded with a lot of things that they give you with the simple the designs and the simple explanations with it right next to it. I thought that's pretty good. Usually within a lot of electronic books they're kind of separate, but one thing I like about this, it tells you how like voltmeters and ammeters kind of work, and it gives you the diagrams and exactly what's actually happening when you're actually trying to test component devices or electronic component devices. So this is really good how a digital multimeter works, uh, current measurement errors, voltage measurement errors, resistant measurement errors. That way you have some idea of what happened, and so that you want to make sure that you're taking accurate measurements. In this section, it also talks about how oscilloscopes work. I didn't really learn how to even use an oscilloscope until I was in my electronic circuits class within a university. So if you're not going to university, you don't need to. This book will explain it. There's also other videos and stuff like that. But this book does a good job of explaining how an oscilloscopes work and how it is able to measure the current and voltage of electronic components or electronic systems. So it's really good that they included that in this book. And you can read through it and it'll tell you how all the different modes work. So whenever you run up on any different type of model or make of an oscilloscope, you'll have some understanding of what all those buttons and knobs actually do and mean. Now, if you want to understand how to power your electronic projects or devices, this is a really good chapter to get to know and understand. Voltage regulators and power supplies. It's going to be pretty foundational to actually have a good basic understanding of this and then actually go into detail, because understanding this will definitely be able to help you troubleshoot whenever you're having power issues with your actual projects. So being able to know how to power your device or how actual power supplies work is actually going to be pretty foundational knowledge to understand. And I think this book does a really good job in explaining that. here's a basic diagram of what happens whenever you have some rectification or power supply. You have an AC signal that gets converted to DC, and then this will go through all the components you've probably already learned previously throughout this chapter, but this is actually a really good diagram that goes through it. You go through all the different types of voltage regulators that you may see out on the market, and it explains exactly what the pinout does. Here's the probably schematic diagram of what's happening, and here's actually what it looks like. So you can be able to compare the two, and that's a good visual to have because when you're reading a schematic, you really want to know exactly. It's like, okay, I see the schematic here, but how does this translate? How do I know which is the actual output and which is the actual input and which is the actual ground whenever I'm looking at it? And then here it tells you it has out, in, ground, and it has the device, and it'll also list how they label it. So whenever you look at the component make and model, you can look at it and you can be like, okay, so that's what that means. So this book does a good job in explaining that. And then here's some different types of diagrams that it shows you here. So car battery voltage regulation, current regulator, 12-volt battery recharger. So these are some simple projects that you can look at and how it all works. So this will have a lot of great information in there. Dual polarity power supply with variable output. Something else that's kind of important to know is linear power supply and switch mode power supply. There's a very good difference between the two, and you might need to know which to use or which one to use in what situation. Switch modes power supplies are definitely more efficient than linear power supplies, but there's a trade off as far as what you're actually trying to do. Uh, Switch mode power supplies can't be used in every scenario, neither can linear power supplies. So this gives you a very good understanding of being able to use either one in whatever scenario. So open frame, enclosed wall plugs. It has all the different things that you may see or want to need to do. Now, another plus with this book is that it has updated content. And this is the latest edition. This is the fourth edition. And the authors, Paul Scher, I believe, and Mark Monk, have done a great job in keeping the material kind of up to date and current, which is crucial in the field like electronics, where technology is always changing and evolving. Now, this is digital electronics, and it gives you all the information you kind of need as far as the basics of how digital electronics work. It goes over binary, hex, and everything like that. So you have really good charts and diagrams. Gives you all the numbers and what the representations of those numbers means. It might can seem overwhelming at first, but if you just stick with it and have some consistency, you'll definitely overcome those learning hurdles. It gets kind of overwhelming at first until you actually get comfortable and get used to actually seeing it. Then it starts making a lot of sense. And as we can see, it goes over logic gate devices and stuff like this. So some of the things that you'll probably see in like engineering textbooks, but this is included in there. And that's on chapter 12 on digital electronics. And you have a great chapter here on microcontrollers. Microcontrollers is something used in kind of like Arduino, so you'll definitely be able to understand exactly how. I think this is the microcontroller used in the Arduino here. So yeah, so you get to see the actual block structure of what's actually happening when you're actually using a microcontroller. So AVR Studios with Blink program, so it has a bit of programming in here, so it walks you through the basics on that. That way you actually know what you're doing. So this is part of the project model that you actually get within this book. So it's really good and very detailed. So that's going to be it for my overview of practical electronics for Inventor. Now, this is by no means going to be a perfect book, but I do think it is going to be a very good general book for anyone to be able to pick up. Right now on Amazon, this is very affordable. It's around $33. So I recommend everyone to pick this up. Now, I highly recommend it to anyone looking to kind of advance their knowledge in electronics, whether you're a student, hobbyist, or even a seasoned pro. Looking for a solid reference, everyone should go pick this up. Now, that's it for today's review. If you've read Practical Electronics for Inventor, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment below. And if you found this review helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more book reviews and recommendations. Thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.